Alright, so hey, what's going on everyone? Tommy here. Welcome back to another video. Today I'm gonna be watching some, instead of drama, let's watch some Storytime animated, guys. Yep, we haven't done this in like some months, so let's look into it, guys.
I was never the type to fawn over boys. When I was little, I ran away from boys on the playground and thought they were yucky. Every time I saw a couple kiss on a movie or be so in love they ached, I would cringe. I was actually beginning to think I was incapable of being into anyone because they all looked so bleak. Then I saw him. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more crazy stories.
Oh guys, you heard them.
It was as if the world around me stopped.
Definitely.
I saw him walking down the hall with his friends. The way he flipped his hair and the way he walked, something about him was so magnetic. I was surprised when no one else was drooling. He walked in my direction. I was actually expecting for our eyes to meet and the music to swell and for us to start a whirlwind romance. But he didn't even see me. He walked past me as if I didn't exist, but I was instantly hooked. I was obsessed. He was in a few of my classes, so I started sketching him in notebooks. I paid close attention during roll call just to hear his name. I snuck into the teacher's lounge to steal tests he had done because, wow, he was so brilliant, but still he never saw me. During my free time, I loved to go on bike rides. I was hiding around my neighborhood, just getting fresh air and enjoying the peace and quiet when I saw something that would change my life. It was my crush.
Changing life, let's see. My mom, my crush mom uses him to get to me. She's okay. Okay.
I was so absorbed staring at him that I didn't notice I was steering towards the edge of the street. I only noticed when my bike hit a bump and I went flying into a bush. I peeked out of the bush, twigs and leaves in my hair, my face bright red in embarrassment. I didn't know if I should have been relieved or sad that my crush didn't even see me. A woman then opened the front door of the house.
Oh my gosh, don't tell me it's an ad.
Do not miss your chance to enter the coin sweepstakes because we are giving away incredible prizes.
It's actually an ad. It's actually an ad,
called him in, saying lunch was ready. As he walked in, she rubbed his hair in a playful, maternal way. I smiled. I had just seen my future mother-in-law for the first time. A light bulb lit up above my head. I knew exactly what my next move should be. I knew my crush was going to leave early the next day to go play video games at a friend's house. Because, of course, I eavesdropped on his conversations. I also knew his mom would go on a run soon after he left because she always did on Saturday mornings. I was watching from a few houses down with my binoculars as he left the house and got into his car. His mom was also heading out in typical running attire. As soon as my crush left, I climbed on my bike and rode towards his mom. No, I wasn't going to hit her with my bike. I simply passed her and then threw myself off the bike. I landed on the pavement right in front of her. She gasped as I fell. She hadn't seen me coming. "Oh my God, are you okay?" she asked, as concerned as a mother would be about her own child. My heart melted. She started helping me stand up. Not only was I in pain from scraping my knees, but I had also practiced crying on command. I had tears streaming down my face and bright red eyes. Being the kind lady that she is, she took me inside her house for some Band-Aids and water. "You sure you're okay to go home?" she asked me after a while, and then I knew it was my time to shine. I burst into tears then and there and started telling her that I couldn't go home yet because my mom kicked me out the other day and I wasn't allowed back until she went to sleep that night. "Mrs. Matthews, I can't go back now. She'll just scream at me and slam the door in my face again," I cried to my crush's mom. Pathetic, I know, but I had a plan. All I needed to do was get this woman to love me and want to adopt me. Then, of course, she'd want me and her son to date, and that's how I would get introduced. Step one of my plan went smoothly. Mrs. Matthews let me stay at her house all day, and she drove me home afterwards. "Those brownies were amazing, Mrs. Matthews," I said to her, teary-eyed, when she dropped me off at my house. "You know, Anna ladies, you can always come over and I'll teach you how to bake anything you want," she said, pinching my cheek before turning to glare at my house. "If your cold-hearted mother allows it," she added through gritted teeth. I chuckled and gave her a hug before stepping out of the car. I waved goodbye before quietly opening the door and heading up to my room. "Hi, Pumpkin. How was your day?" my mom asked when she saw me at the top of the stairs. I smiled at her and gave her a kiss on the cheek. "It was great, Mom, but I'm off to bed." Oh, did I forget to mention I lied about my mom being horrible? I know. I'm the worst. But it was all for the greater good. Mrs. Matthews and I started hanging out all the time. She loved having me around because she always wanted a daughter. She took me shopping, she took me to lunch, she even took me to a mother-daughter cooking class one time.
Bruh.
Mrs. Matthews invited me over to her house a lot to teach a lot about things that she always wanted to teach her kids. But all she had were sporty boys. One day she was teaching me her favorite cookie recipe, but I excused myself to go to the bathroom. On my way there, I ran into my crush and almost fainted. How did I forget? It was his house too. I was bound to run into him. Hey, he said with a puzzled look on his face. Do I know you? He asked. I explained that his mom was teaching me to make cookies, and he smiled, saying he was glad his mom found someone to teach. What's your name? I asked him, pretending I didn't have Mrs. Garrett Matthews scribbled all over my diary. He said the answer I already know, then asked for my name, to which I replied, Annalise. What he said next almost made me melt. Pretty name for a pretty girl. He winked at me before saying he'd see me around, and then went up the stairs to what I guessed was his room. I had to slap my hands over my mouth to stop myself from screaming. I kept thinking, did that just happen to me? When our cookies were fresh out of the oven, Mrs. Matthews told me to take them up to Garrett's room, saying they were his favorite. She winked when she gave them to me, but I pretended I didn't see, of course. I ran up the stairs, my heart beating out of my chest. When I got to his door, I heard him talking to someone. Babe, I can't have this fight again, just listen to me, he was saying, to a girl, his girlfriend. My stomach sank. I could feel tears starting to well up in my eyes.
That's what you get.
I put the dish of cookies in front of Garrett's closed door and ran downstairs. I cried a little in the bathroom, but then I thought, if I get hurt this much, not even dating him, it's probably not good to pursue him. I wiped the tears off my face, held my head high, and walked back to the kitchen to hang out with my crush's mom. I started going over to the Matthews house more often. I guess I felt more comfortable when I wasn't thinking about Garrett. Mrs. Matthews had invited me over to make this really hard recipe, but when I rang the doorbell, it was Garrett who opened the door. My mom's sick, but she said you could come in anyways, he said. I nodded and walked right into the kitchen and got to work. Mrs. Matthews had a super detailed recipe ready for me, but it was still so much work for just one person. I was about to call it quits when Garrett came downstairs, saying his mom sent him to help me out. It felt kind of nice bossing him around, and he was definitely amused. I tasted some of the melted chocolate and must have gotten some on my chin because Garrett suddenly grabbed my face and wiped it off,
normal.
staring into my eyes.
Well,
I
not
could
that
feel myself
part,
starting
not
to
that
blush,
part,
so I
bro.
turned away. But he wasn't done. I pretended I didn't notice, but he was purposefully messing up or getting batter and chocolate all over his face to have me wipe it off or help him. After a while, we were just messing around with the flour and chocolate. I had so much fun with him that day. I felt my crush start to come back. But he still had a girlfriend. A few weeks passed and Garrett and I became friends. He even talked to me at school sometimes. It was prom night. I wasn't going because I didn't have a date, but I volunteered for cleanup afterwards with my friend Paul. After the party was over, I biked over to the school, grabbed a garbage bag, and started picking up cups and corsages that got stepped on. Paul and I heard an argument outside the gym, and me being my curious self, I just had to listen in. I peeked through the huge door and saw Garrett and his girlfriend. They were arguing. He's my best friend, Casey. How could you do that to me? Garrett yelled. She yelled some stuff back, but I was more focused on Garrett. He looked like he was so hurt. After a while, his girlfriend stomped off, and Garrett stayed there alone, sitting on the steps leading up to the gym. I put down my garbage bag and sat down next to him. You okay? I asked softly. He nodded. I wanted to break up with her for a while, but I didn't think she'd cheat on me, he mumbled. I put my hand on his shoulder to let him know I was there for him. After a long silence, I started getting up to leave, but he grabbed my hand and pulled me back down before kissing me. The music didn't swell, and no angels playing the harp showed up, but I did feel like I was flying. He pulled away and smiled at me. I smiled back. We sat next to each other, looking up at the stars. It was kind of awkward when his mom picked us up and asked how our night went, but Garrett grabbed my hand and answered for the both of us. It was great. Garrett and I started hanging out a lot. I even noticed Mrs. Matthews would conveniently have to go out and buy something or pick up Garrett's brothers from soccer practice. But before she left, she would always turn on soft jazz and wink at me. That's when I realized my plan worked. It was the weekend. Garrett invited me to a party at his friend's house, and I brought Paul because he was just sitting at home watching TV. Garrett, Paul, and I sat in the backyard with our feet in the pool. I could tell that Garrett didn't really like Paul and wanted to go hang out with his friends for a while, so I told him he could go, and he kissed me on the cheek before running inside the house. "I'll go get some drinks," said Paul before getting up too. I sat alone at the pool for a while. I was starting to look around trying to find Garrett or Paul, but then someone put their hands over my eyes. "Garrett," I smiled, turning around and kissing him without even opening my eyes, but it felt different. I opened my eyes and saw it wasn't Garrett. It was Paul. I pushed him away, but it was too late. Garrett was standing right there, holding 2 pizza slices, which he threw on the floor before pushing Paul onto the grass and punching him. "It's not what it looks like," I said to him, trying to get him to calm down, but he just looked at me disappointed and angry and walked out of the party. I felt so bad. His last girlfriend cheated on him, and now I accidentally did too. Ugh, I wanted to smack myself. The very next day after the party, I ran over to the Matthews house to apologize. I would do anything if it meant Garrett would forgive me. But of course, I forgot that someone else was mad at me too. Mrs. Matthews opened the door, and when she saw me, she started crying. "Why would you do this to us?" she sobbed dramatically. I closed the door behind me and hugged her. Gosh, I felt so bad. I could feel the heaviness of the guilt. "I'm sorry, I made a mistake. I thought it was Garrett behind me. It was all a huge misunderstanding. You have to believe me," I cried. Mrs. Matthews hugged me back and said she knew me and that she knew I would never hurt her son on purpose. She wiped the tears off my face and told me to go upstairs, that he was in his room. My hands were shaking as I went up the stairs. I knocked on his door softly and heard him say, "Come in." He was sitting on the floor against his bed. He looked like he might have been up all night. His hair was super messy. I sat down next to him, and we just stayed there in silence for a while. I knew he hated yelling, and I didn't want to fight with him. "I'm sorry," I said. "I made a mistake." He said, "I know, I heard you calling my name, but it still hurt." I started telling him that I would never hurt him on purpose because I loved him. As soon as I said that, his eyes lit up. "You do?" he asked, and I nodded. He said he loved me too, and peace was restored between us. A couple months passed. Garrett and my parents were meeting for the first time soon. I was at his house taking a nap in his room when he and his mom started whispering something. It woke me up, but I pretended I was still asleep. "It's beautiful, Mom. She's gonna love it," I heard Garrett say. "Just make sure you're both ready. It's a huge commitment," said Mrs. Matthews. I then heard the distinct sound of a ring box closing. Was Garrett gonna propose to me soon? It took everything in me not to jump up in excitement, but then my excitement plummeted when Mrs. Matthews said, "Now wake her up and let's go meet the monster mother who doesn't deserve her as a daughter." Oh no, I forgot about that. My sweet-as-sugarcane mom was going to be so confused when she met Mrs. Matthews. You can probably imagine how shaky my hands were when entering the restaurant where Garrett and my parents were meeting. I saw my mom and dad sitting at the table, and my mom waved at me and smiled brightly. "If she thinks she can fool me with that act," Mrs. Matthews mumbled under her breath. When we sat down to eat, I was visibly shaking. My mom put her hand on my forehead, asking if I had a fever. Mrs. Matthews slammed her cutlery on the table and said, "Don't you touch her," through gritted teeth. My mom's eyes grew wide, and I could tell she was about to snap at Mrs. Matthews, so I pulled both of them to the bathroom and explained what happened. I could tell Mrs. Matthews felt betrayed, but my mom suddenly hugged her. "Thank you for caring for my daughter," said my mom. I could almost see Mrs. Matthews' heart melt. My mom could do that to anyone. Mrs. Matthews pulled me into the hug, and all the lies I had told dissipated. We went back to the table, and I was delighted to see Mr. Matthews and Garrett getting along famously with my dad. We were gonna be the best family.
Well, since this I explained, guys, this is the end of the video. If you enjoyed, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe with post notifications and join my Discord server. Link will be down below in the description, and the link to this animated video will be down below in the description. Bye, peace out.